on the train. It's insane. They're trying to now cut 1,000. They're trying to close 1,000 ticket offices. It's just like immediate job losses like that. And obviously all the severe kind of well-being consequences of that. So, yeah, he was telling us all about his job, all about how difficult it was, but at the same time, how important it was and how proud he was of his job. It gave him this amazing sense of purpose. And, it turned out that it was his first time on strike. And I reckon it's probably the same for at least 95% of the rail workers, I asked him, how does it feel? How does it feel being on strike? How does it feel taking this kind of stand for the first time in your life? He responded, I feel powerful. And I was really touched, and I responded and I said, do you feel rebellious? And this wry smile came over his face, and he said, yeah. And he said it with such confidence, and it was such like a simple interaction, but it was such a beautiful and emotional moment for me, because like for so long I'd hardly encountered anyone from my class who had expressed that they felt they had the power to force like positive change against all odds. Like, until this moment, I'd been battered with people of my class. Basically being battered by the establishment and just taking it, and even like kind of romanticising the notion of how good they are at taking it. Oh, we got through this, we got through that. Just kind of get over it. It's not something to fucking, sorry to use that language, to aspire to, is it? So, yeah, this was like, it was a really, really beautiful moment, and he's just one of millions now. 40,000 rail workers are out, 115,000 postal workers are out, barristers are out. I mean, they're stood there in their uniforms on picket lines. It's quite a sight. And it's going to be sector after sector after sector after sector. And the unity that's building is so, so beautiful. We've not seen unity like this in the trade union movement and amongst ordinary people for a very long time. And of course it takes for it to get to a point where enough is enough, and enough people identify with the shared struggle, and we all know what that shared struggle is. It's the cost of living crisis, and it's a class struggle. And when it's a class struggle, all of a sudden so many barriers can just disappear. So many things that you could argue are peripheral in comparison just disappear. This unity appears, just like it did between the miners and the queer movement, for example, in the 80s. The miners that were on strike were like ragingly homophobic, like notoriously homophobic, but the queer movement coming out in support of the miners just shattered all that. It just like it went away, and now it's celebrated as like one of the most powerful moments of unity in political history, and really put on a pedestal by the trade union movement. So, this is what's going on, and new laws are being brought in to undermine all of this, of course. So, the government are using quite similar tactics that they've used against the direct action climate movement in recent years. They've recently introduced a new law which allows companies to use as much agency labour, so-called scab labour, as they want, just as much as they want on tap, to cover strike days. And of course this renders some strike actions largely ineffective in terms of like material financial impact. Yeah, some workers are more difficult to replace with temporary labour than others. So in some cases it's going to be pretty much impossible to enforce this. Train drivers, for example, you can't just get someone to come in and temporarily drive a train without any kind of experience. But under this new law, the most vulnerable workers are like the bin workers, for example, and postal workers, You know, the bin workers have been out on strike for months now all over the country, and unfortunately they are going to be easier to replace. Both, you know, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are promising to crack down even further than this. So, like, you know, what kind of legislation are we going to see? If this is not bad enough, like, are we going to be seeing injunctions on outside railway lines and outside places of work where workers picket? We have already seen one, by the way, outside Great Ormond Street Hospital. That's gone under the radar. Are we going to see outright illegality of strike action? They're both promising it, like, and they have no doubts. They're more than capable. They don't care about us. Get that one out of your mind straight away. But what does this tell us? It tells us that what we've been doing works. It tells us that our tactics work. Most of you will know that classic Mahatma Gandhi saying, at first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And how do they fight? Through legislation. Amongst other tactics, of course, you know, that often involve violence, police violence, state violence, etc. Recent legislative efforts, like the one that I've just given an example of, but also like the Police Crime and Sentencing Bill, that very explicitly targets the Gypsy Roma travelling community, Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, etc., etc., etc. The Nationality and Borders Bill, the Public Order Act. All of these recent legislative efforts, they prove that our actions are effective. They prove that our actions are a threat to the establishment. So we have to ask ourselves, like, are we going to give in to these legislations and resort to what the establishment will allow us to do? And it's only allowed because it's largely ineffective and very easy for them to control. Or are we going to carry on with things that are now proven to work? Obviously, it's way more complex than that. You know, some people can't afford to take certain actions for all sorts of reasons, and we have to be understanding of that.
Excuse me, you've got a wonderful track and I've got to go. I just want to say a bit more research. Mention WEF, WHO, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates. They're all the things you're talking